Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome back to Vicky 3, episode 31, and it's time for our last playthrough. Finally taking on a great power or major power, and we're looking at different options around here. So we have the Ottoman Empire, number 9, really actually heavily tempted by this one. It's an outsider, they're not that strong as a major power, but it's right next door to Persia, which we've already played. So we already know a lot of what's going to happen there. There's a lot of similarities there. And I was just like, okay, we need something a little different. I was tempted by two Sicilies who, uniting Italy is an obvious target from there. But, what do you go on and do? Italy's on the smaller side of what is capable, what is possible. Tempting, though. Small, momentary attraction to trying to do the Netherlands as a northern European, and what's possible there, but you're going to kind of just be under the umbrella of Prussia, France, and Great Britain all the time doing that one. And that eventually led me to the almost decision of taking Spain. Really almost. The population is not as big as the superpowers around them. Their GDP is nowhere near as big as superpowers around them. Their literacy is okay. They don't have as much arable land. They have an okay military, but not huge. And other territory around the world. It's not the powerhouse that Spain once had been. So Spain, especially if you want to play in Europe, is incredibly tempting. And I think in the end of the final two, it so very nearly tipped the balance. But based on the last playthrough and what happened there, and also being American myself and having done nothing in the Americas in all of these playthroughs as of yet, it's the one area we haven't gotten into at all. So yes, we haven't really gotten into Europe either, but the whole rest of that surrounding region we've been playing consistently through. So the one totally untapped area is the Americas, and being that I am American, and being that Japan playthrough, right, ended with us giving 2 beatdowns on the US, an obvious opportunity here. Now, US, of course, is a potential powerhouse, and that's why they already sit at number 6. They have the population, they have the GDP, they have the arable land, they already have high literacy, but it also comes with a number of challenges that the other nations don't have. One, you have all of this uncolonized native territory, which is, coming at a cost. It's not simple colonization like you get in other regions. Our military has 11 units. There is no military. There's a little bit of a navy, but so no military, tons of potential conflict and necessary growth along the way. And then how many obstacles are you going to hit as we try to paint the map and grow? So on to the US for our final playthrough. Alright, so first thing, we are colonizing at a rapid rate all over through this area, so it's already happening organically. Also, Texas. So for those who are unfamiliar, Texas is the Lone Star State. It is known as the Lone Star because it was a separate nation. It was its own star. That's where that nickname came from. And it had its independence from Mexico. It's also engaged in war with Mexico now, and they don't necessarily want to be part of the U.S., but the people that live there, that gained that independence, all came from the U.S., and ultimately, with the might of Mexico, it was the safer choice. Some certainly wanted to be part of the U.S., others liked the idea of independence, but ultimately it was debt and the threat of Mexico. Those two factors are going to push them to being adopted by the U.S. and becoming one of the states. We are going to want to adopt Texas into the U.S. ASAP, and then So those seem to be the first kind of two tasks at hand. And of course, the slavery debate. We will absolutely be banning slavery at some point, but very much at a cost. I'm certain of it. It is quite clear we're going to need a much larger military than what we have right now in the very, very near future. Weekly innovation already starts at 62, so it's got a better base than what we're used to seeing. 12 production techs at the start, including all the way down to railway. 16 military tech at the beginning, so they might not have a large military, but they definitely have the technology of a better military. And 22 society techs puts the US way ahead of any nation that we have played so far, and already with somewhat better weekly innovation. The base of 50 is where we've been at, I think, for every other playthrough, so having anything better than that is already a step in the right direction. But we're going to, unlike previous playthroughs, want to have the max tech. We want to get all the way through it, so we're going to want a lot of universities as we go through to see things happen rapidly. Not quite sure where to start with this one tech-wise. We have all tier 1 techs already, so there's no obvious, take the easy one. We're on to tier 2 techs. I'm not going to start with tier 3, so, that doesn't narrow the selection by much. I want all three areas. I want a very strong military, I want a strong society, and I definitely want production. We want to have a very, very strong economy in the US. That seems to be the ticket forward, right? That is your path to kicking butt and taking names. Pharmaceuticals in society, though, doesn't necessarily feel like, oh, here's the path. Health system means bigger population. Quinine is going to impact colonization and give us a lot more territory and give us better resources that aren't available within the US itself. So seems like a good path on rapid growth. We don't have to take everything by force. Brief look at the market, starting with what are we producing the most? Fabric, grain, services, wood, clothes, furniture already fairly high, even tobacco above 1,000. But in terms of the balance, fertilizer, sugar, tobacco are all very high. And then what is very low? Grain. We need a lot more food, it looks like, and cloth. Those are the two big ones starting out wise, and then clothing is the other big need. Service kind of stuff, our basic needs are not quite being met, so we'll want to start by addressing those. But I do think that the US is destined to grow rapidly, which means construction at 0 of 35 is 100% the biggest thing that we're going to want to address early on, so that we can grow rapidly. But what sort of reserves do we have? 3 million with a balance of 7,000, and that's with no construction. You throw in construction and that balance is going to come down immediately. So we're going to throw in a couple grain, a couple cloth, like one clothing to get us started. And then we're going to turn our attention to growing the rate that we can do construction and see kind of how much we can afford to do. So our construction sector is already turned up to level 2 right off the beginning. We have 6 right now. But once you activate it and actually start doing construction, you can see we already have a negative balance. But it's just minus 3,000 with 3 million in reserves. It's not going to be too costly. Adding one more is definitely going to add to the cost. I mean, where are we at construction-wise right now? Almost 23,000 in terms of expenses. So you divide that out by 6, and you're looking at about 4,000 per unit. So adding one more will increase that deficit by 4,000. So I think that's about all we can afford to do early on, but we'll get one more, and yeah, there's that 4,000 to 5,000 cost range right there. Now, of course, one of the major things that's going to play out for us in this one is the government and how we already have our democracy Right now, Andrew Jackson is the president, so that one plays into the People's Party perfectly. They don't have a lot of clout. Historically, Andrew Jackson is one of those guys who is on the fence. Every handful of years, he's loved for the positive things he did, and then he's despised for the bad things he did. So there's a lot of back and forth. But he was very much a man of the people, not playing into the other groups very well at all. So we'll see what happens with the next election. I don't know what, if anything, can be done now. But let's take a look at kind of where things are at. We have a presidential republic with census suffrage, of course, racial segregation, total separation of church and state, elected bureaucrats, a national militia. We have no home affairs. Guaranteed liberties looks like that could actually just about get through. We do have that 20% of Andrew Jackson. That could be a good thing. What's that? No home affairs has no effect. Guaranteed liberties would hurt bureaucracy by 129, but that's not a problem. Revolution, secession, progression speed goes down. Radicals decreases, loyalists increases. Guaranteed liberties seems like a wonderful thing to try to go for right now, while the group in power, 20% is a decent start rate, but they don't have a ton of clout. It could take a while to try to do something, but I do like that one. No health system, the biggest flaw of the U.S. already right there. Very pleasant, or very present even now. I think it's quite clear, guaranteed liberties with Jackson. But the problem is we have less than a year to the next election, and they're going to be out of power probably before we even have our first attempt at this with the low clout of the government. So nice idea, but it's not going to happen. We're going to have to wait for the next election to try to do something. We do want to get on with diplomacy, so starting with Texas, we need to improve relations because we very much want to incorporate them, right? Texas statehood. Looks like we're not that far from making that happen. Ooh, wow, hello, 6 unpinned journal entries. And that came on fast. Trade agreement with Great Britain. This is going to be a good thing, as we're going to need certain aspects of the market addressed. We've somehow already started to turn a positive balance here with just a couple additions. And Texas seemed to have gotten out of their conflict, so I do think we are going to get Texas absorbed into the U.S. quite soon. We need a positive relations of 20 is all to see if we can make that happen. We want our universities to be effective, so we're going to immediately turn up to having the philosophy department. It does come at a cost, but it's going to trigger one of our journal entries anyway, and give us a little bit more going in the direction we need it to. What does the White House do? Plus 20% government administration building throughput. The U.S. is going to get a lot of events regarding Native Americans, regarding slavery, and we begin slavery with Daniel Webster changing his ideology to an abolitionist, and we absolutely want to try to push towards abolition as we do not want slavery going forward. That's going to be one of the big goals, is getting through that without a war, or winning that war quickly and easily. That first election coming now in just a couple weeks' time. And there it is, first election, Whig Party, with the biggest percentage, 40% of the votes, but that is very much split among different groups. So we're going to go ahead and take our free government reform and see where this puts us. Charles Finney has won the election. He is an abolitionist, part of the evangelicals. Rural folk are now known as the Progressive Party, still led by Andrew Jackson. I think the one thing that stands out to me is we have an abolitionist president, we have an abolitionist party, and maybe a secondary abolitionist group. Let's see what kind of clout that they would have. That would give us a legitimate government to have the Whigs and the People's Party in charge with 2 abolitionists, but can they do something? We'd actually be able to ban slavery very early on based on this election. Now, there's going to be consequences for doing this. I mean, there's absolutely going to be consequences. But this is the most legitimate government we can form, and it's strongly in favor of banning slavery. So we're going to do it. We're going to do it now. 1836, we're going for it. I think it does mean we're going to need to start trying to push the military very early, though. Now, the only thing about this one also is that the size of the military isn't that important. It's what states try to leave the Union, and then making sure you have military in other states. So we could see pretty quickly who's going to resist the banning of slavery. It has a 44% chance of succeeding, 55% chance to advance on the first go, and it's going to take half a year. So let's give that a go and start to see. This is going to have an impact. I didn't look in very closely. Our taxes are turned down quite low. We have no consumption taxes, obviously, so we could turn that up, but of course there are benefits right now. Fewer radicals is a very, very good thing when we're trying to ban slavery right now. So we don't want to turn that up yet. Let's go ahead and use a consumption tax to kind of get things on the go. Luxury furniture can really bring in a lot. Services, there you go, services. That's a huge increase. And 200 authority. Bam, just like that. We have resolved our financial burden. All right, well, here we are. We have 2 days until our next checkpoint, and there is the Southern planters' resistance with critical radicalism, meaning it's gonna go up. It's gonna take all of 10 weeks. So we need to see the states: Virginia with a bit of a navy, North Carolina, Tennessee. That's 3, that's 6, that's 7 of our units, and I think we only have 11. So we need to very rapidly get units in the north, as that is the South coming together. And yeah, there's your revolution pocket. You can see that red outline. And are they going to be joined by others? Looks like West Virginia has already formed as a result of they couldn't figure out how to separate the 2 states later on. But there's possible additions, Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas could all be kind of joining in on the southern side before long. We need to get some units in the north right now. All right, that's 7 units on the way in the north, and it succeeded. It succeeded on the first go. So we have managed to ban slavery right off the bat. That's awesome. Slavery is banned, but that revolution is still very much on its way. So we're going to have a very early civil war, which right now we would be the losers of. So fighting this war is going to take those units and more. Let's go ahead and keep on adding. We already have 7 on the way, but let's get some more. Not Missouri could be, but we're not 100% sure. Indiana definitely. Huge influx of units are set, and we need to switch our construction and go straight to the barracks. Straight to the barracks. We are preparing for war. Now the radicalism is already starting to fall off a little bit, but it's coming in just 3 weeks. 94%, 93%. Does it have to be over 100 to get there? Either way, we needed a larger military, so this is going to take care of that, but they are falling off. They are falling off. Could it be that we are going to actually succeed in avoiding the Civil War? We have 10 years to ban slavery. And Texan statehood is complete. Texas statehood is complete. So we have done it. Texas is now going to be part of the Union, or will be in a moment. And we also just finished the pharmaceuticals. And there it is. United States will annex Texas. Poof. Okay. Now, what's that going to do, though, with this? Because they are kind of pro-slavery in Texas, but their radicalism is getting weaker. Definitely not pushing any other topics right now, as we want to avoid the Civil War if possible, though we are very quickly getting ourselves in a position to win the war if the war does happen and win the war fast. Gold discovered in Colorado. That's going to be a nice addition. Money to be made. Meanwhile, that colonization process still going on, making progress. It's going to take a little while to get through all of it. Dedicated police force, though, is just starting to draw a little bit of radicalism. France wants a trade agreement. And with all of those new units in the north, I don't worry about the south anymore and the revolution that could be coming, because we now have a much stronger military in the north, twice that of the south, which would, kind of play into the expected. Jackson's Indian removal series of events continue on. It's a pretty nasty event, but we're going to spend some extra money to make sure it goes less poorly. And of course, Trail of Tears ends up happening anyway, despite our efforts. Two things have just happened. One, we have finished our research on quinine. This is going to help us grow colonies more rapidly, especially outside of the U.S. And then the timing for the radicalism, for the pushback against the legacy slavery law that we just passed, seems to have just timed out, and the revolution is going to fall off here very quickly and go away. Virginia seems the only one that's still interested in rebelling against the nation. So we seem to have passed the Civil War without having to play out the Civil War. That's good. Very good. All right, we've finished one journal entry, expanding a couple universities in New York. That's going to give us a plus 25% university building throughput for a number of years. That's going to help our tech go even faster. Started colonizing the two territories now that we have Texas under our control, and then continuing on completing rest of Oklahoma with the, quote-unquote Indian Territory. Long story short, on what the Indian Territory is, a lot of the eastern United States Native Americans were forcefully relocated to an otherwise uncolonized territory that didn't have too many natives in it, didn't have Americans in it, white European Americans in it, and so they were forcibly moved to this territory, which for a long time was known as the Indian Territory, today known as Oklahoma. A lot of people died being forcefully relocated. It was a pretty nasty event, and Andrew Jackson was the one who was largely responsible for that event. Entirely responsible, really. Finishing another journal entry, romanticism, getting art in, so we're going to get we can get progress on realism, or we can get throughput in the arts academies, which really there's not a lot going on there yet. It's still rather small, so let's go ahead and take the tech boost. I'm really sensing that one of our stronger paths forward is going to be through rapid tech advancements. A week till the election. This is going to be an important moment for us. The progressives have won comfortably over the Democrats. Now, for those who don't know, the Democratic Party was the slavery party. Things flipped in the early 20th century, where the parties essentially reversed themselves. The Republican Party was formed as an anti-slavery party, and this is the time, 1840, where they're starting to emerge and gain some momentum still, prior to the Civil War. But that big flipping of the parties, the ideological shift, isn't going to happen for another, more than half a century. The Democratic Party is not the left. It is the right. Not the extreme right, but it's definitely the right. So the intelligentsia, along with the petite bourgeoisie, are going to form up the current government. And what's confirming, you see we're at 81, so we're pretty good legitimacy wise. And then Abraham Lincoln, much earlier than in real life, has become president. And this is actually going to open a pathway. Now that slavery is already taken care of, we can do other various laws, such as a dedicated police force. Wow. 2 laws and 2 times passing them on the first go with a slightly less than 50% chance. We have gotten so lucky in this playthrough so far. And yeah, 2 laws passed. That's really good. And the U.S. is already in fairly good shape regarding a lot of its laws. They're already quite progressive compared to the other playthroughs that we have had. Colonization efforts continue and go without much resistance. We have progressed rather rapidly, and internally we're going to start doing external before too long here. I just fear that too many colonization projects can be a little bit of a problem. But the economy grows rapidly. We have annexed Texas and passed 2 key laws, including the banning of slavery, and avoided that civil war, which is just mega. In terms of journal entries, we had 9 of them right off the bat. We've already finished 3 of those journal entries. The slavery debate is almost halfway towards resolving that one. And then the whaling industry, munitions industry are 2 that I'm already actively working on. Things are queued up, so that list could get even shorter before too long. Things are going well. Things have gone very, very well for this first episode. We remain number 6 as a great power. We've already more than doubled the size of our military, though it is still quite small. So that's one thing that's going to need to be definitely addressed as we go forward. That is going to do it for this episode, though. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe. See you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. And bye for now.